Now if we look at question 6, it says a video conferencing program supports up to 6 users. Speech from each user is sampled and digitized, right, means converted from analog to digital, and digitized values are stored in an array called sample. The array sample consists of 6 rows by 128 columns and is of type integer. Each row contains 128 digitized sound samples from one user. The digitized sound samples from each user are to be processed to produce a single value, which will be stored in a 1D array result of type integer. This process will be implemented by a procedure called mix. Right, and then mix, well, it should calculate the average of each of these six sound samples in a column. Also, it will ignore sound samples with a value less, well, 10 or less. It's going to store the average value right in the corresponding position in result, and then repeat for each column in the array sample. And yeah, I mean here they give us a nice example, right? So it's hopefully quite easy to see. Now the thing that's a bit different is, often, when we've got a 2D array like this, often we would loop, we would have the row loop, as the outer loop, and then the column loop would be the inner loop. So what that would mean is, we would start here like row 1, column 1, then we go, row 1, column 2, row 1, column 3, right, etc. So we're kind of looping through, left to right. Whereas in this case, we actually want to loop through, the column first. So yeah, of course we want to loop down this column, right, then we go to the next one, right, then the next one. So what this means is, the column loop would be on the outside, and then the row loop would be on the inside. Alright, so yeah, hopefully that makes sense, and then, we'll just go ahead and start trying to code this. As always, if you want this starter code, we can just go here and we can go to the exam questions. Right, obviously choose the correct exam. I think it's paper 21, May, June 2023, and find, I think, question 6, sound sampling. Right, and then, you can get some test data like this. Right, anyway then, let's just go ahead and create this. So we want to go procedure, this is called mix, and it says we don't need any parameters, okay, because, this sample, this will be a global array. Right, and then, let's just go end procedure. And right, if we think about the variables we need, first we're just going to need, I guess, total, right? Because this will be the total for each column, because of course, we need to calculate that for when we divide it, to get the average. But if we look here, it also says ignore sound samples of values 10 or less. And if we just go ahead and look at the example, like in this second column, we get 4 20s, then 3 and 4. So in this case here, the total will be 80, right, because we ignore these two. And then of course we get 80 divided by 4, right, which is 20. So we also need to keep count of how many valid samples there are. So I mean, let's call this maybe valid count. And yeah, I mean, I think that's all we need, right? So I mean, I'm just going to leave myself space, right, just in case we do need to add something. Which of course, in the exam you should also do as well, leave yourself space. But yeah, I mean, let's just, start trying to code this. Right, and in this time again, we want to go, the column loop should be on the outside. So here we want to loop, from 1 until 128. Okay, hang on. Right, okay, yeah, so to 128. And then I guess what we want to do, let's set the total to 0. Let's also set the valid count to 0, and then here we'll just loop through the rows. So we'll go row 1, and then, I did it again. Right, and then just go until row 6. And what we will do, I mean, I think, we could store this in a variable, but I think, we don't really need to. So let's access the array directly. Okay, this is going to be sample, and then here, it's got to be row then column. Okay. Because even though we're looping through, column then row, right, to actually access the array, it still has to be row then column. And let's say if this is greater than 10, right, then it means it's going to be valid. So what we're going to do, we're going to set the valid count, and we'll just increment this. And then the total, again, we're just going to add to the total. So that'll be the total, and then plus the sample, right, and then I guess this row, and then why did I say cow? Okay, I think right, column. Yeah, and I think that should be okay. And then, let's then just go next row. And then what we want to do here, so here is once we've looped through, the 6 rows, right, hopefully we got the correct total, the correct valid count. Then we just want to assign this to the place in result. So I think, right, this is going to be, yeah, the index will be column, okay, because it's just going to be a 1D array. And then what we're going to do, well, we're just going to assign this, and yeah, do they have to be integers? I guess. Yeah, okay, right, so it has to be an integer. So, right, what we can do then, I mean, we can just use this int. And what this is going to be, is going to be the total divided by the valid count. Alright, and then, yeah, if we then just go next col, and I mean, I think this should work. So if we just call mix, and you know, as always, right, in the exam, you wouldn't have to call this, right, you only need to write this procedure. But I mean, yeah, what I'm going to do, well, I'm just going to kind of have a loop to actually, you know, just to output the results. But again, of course, you know, you don't need to do this. So let's just go, yeah, I guess column again, or let's say 1, and this will go until 128. And then, right, what we're going to do, we're just going to output, and this will be results, and then, well, index column, right, and then if we just go next column. And, you know, honestly, this would be quite difficult to actually test because, well, you know, we've just got so much data here. But, I mean, yeah, let's see if this seems to work. Right, so it's saying the first one is 32, and if we look at that, well, the first column, we've got, what, 28, we've also got 16, we've got 37, 42 and 12, so I think 32 seems about correct. And I mean, let's just say here, let's say if we make this 5, well, now of course this 5 shouldn't be counted, and I mean, well, honestly, in fact, let's just go 5, let's go 5, yeah, let's go 5, and I don't know, maybe let's make this one 30, and let's make this 40, right, so now there should only be 2 that are valid, so it should say 35. And yeah, okay, so we see this seems to be working.